Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill, Season 2.
Yep, Campfire Cooking, Season 2, Episode 5. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. That's Age. We're back from our Anime Night in the dojo, and well, last week Makoto got a fancy box. It had a ring in it. We got to talk about that. If that ring doesn't come up again, I'll be surprised. So, either way, we're on the 22nd floor of a potential 30-floor dungeon because nobody's ever cleared this, so maybe there's something beyond floor 30. Who knows? But, once again, Fel could have cleared this before he got the blessing of the God of War. And now they have Dora-chan and freaking, Sui, so they're fine.
And Wagyu beef.
Yeah, and food buffs for everybody, except for Makoto, who didn't even get a 10% boost. Totally worth it. It's a good thing he has more money than most countries. So, either way, looking forward to this next episode. More dungeon shenanigans. Apparently the 22nd floor boss is being, propped up as potentially a big deal, but I really kind of doubt it. The biggest threat they faced was the Earth Dragon, and we didn't even see what happened there, but we saw the outcome.
Yeah.
And Fel did that by himself. So if you got a tag team over there, I'm sure they'll be fine. We're in full-on hyper. There's not really going to be that big of a threat to this group at this point. It's not really going to be conducive to anything outside of probably when we start getting into potentially if the series goes into like the politics of dealing with the other nations and stuff like that. So we'll just have to see. But as it stands right now, we're in full on. They're already really strong, and Makoto was obviously going to be the biggest liability. But with Fel's shield, it doesn't really matter. So, you know what I mean? And Hephaestus giving him that defense skill, as cool as that is, like Makoto says in that second serving thing at the end of the episode, it's just a layer of bubble wrap. It's nice to have it. He doesn't need it though. It's hyper worst case scenario, he can use it. But
yeah, it's just another one of those things of having some form of protective layer in the event that he ever gets caught without the barrier up.
Yep. So either way, lots of interesting stuff going on. We'll just have to see where we go from here. But again, these first 4 episodes of this show have gotten more done than most full core seasons of other shows. So that's very impressive. So we'll just have to see where we go from here. But either way, we're going to get going here. So people on Patreon, we'll see you on the other side of the edit for the timer reaction, and people on YouTube for the discussion and review. So here goes some. Well, alrighty then. There you guys have it. Another fabulous episode with we talked about this in a lot of the series that we do, and there are certain shows or whatever the source material is that establishes something like Sui's original their first special skill was the healing factor, that they could make healing potions, kind of like Rimuru, that kind of thing, but that they were a healing slime. And they could make any myriad of potions from, your basic to can heal super ouchies, like a full potion from, reincarnated as slime, that kind of thing. But,
which, from what we've seen, this world doesn't really have an equivalent to the full potions normally. They cap out at the high potions, they were talking about, which Sui's top full potions are superior to.
Yeah, because they do. We saw in the first season where Makoto busted out the best one, and it did everything. It cleansed, poisoned the disease, it healed him, brought back everything. It was like a full potion, basically. So what I'm getting at here, yeah, full on panacea. But what I'm getting at here is the fact that they didn't forget it was a thing. The author didn't forget about it. You know what I mean? Even just small asides like this, to have it be a thing that happens every once in a while, so that it's not just a one-off, oh yeah, so we can do that. Okay, can we just see them do it and it be useful again, more than just the first time? You know what I mean? So when stuff like this happens, it's always worth pointing out because it's always nice, even if Tempest here doesn't return to the story, they still kept the establishment of Sui being a healing slime a thing, and it wasn't just, well, we only did that in season 1 and we're never going to do it again.
Yeah, no, Sui's species, technical like full species is giant healing slime.
Yeah.
It's just Sui, once again, suppresses their size normally to be more manageable.
Yeah.
But they actually have a very, very large total mass that they just, condense and make smaller. That's how, they get really big. Like, that's their normal size, and how they can, turn into like several dozen Suis.
Yeah. So
by dividing mass.
Yeah. So it's always nice when they do stuff like this because it just kind of like, if it's something that you want to see just happen, it's like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool ability. Hopefully they use it, and then you just like never see it again. It's like, all right. You know what I mean? So even if their party probably won't ever have a use for these potions, this situation will probably always arise that he can just be helpful, and that's Makota's character. If he can help, he's going to. You know what I mean? That's how he always is. So it's just...
Yeah, he's a support. Like, that's just in his nature. He's not really like an actual fighter, adventurer, like you would normally find. He is a healer despite not actually having heal spells.
Yeah. So either way, I'm glad they brought that back. The fountain in the middle of this room ended up not being a suspect, which kind of bums me out. But that's okay. It can be a safe space where Sui can stare at its reflection and be happy.
Sui can reflect on the situation.
Yeah. So that's totally fine. I made the joke last week about how they ran into Iron Will and they were going to have to like feed the whole room. Well, they fed the whole room this time, so there you go. He ended up helping out these adventurers with sandwiches on the way back and stuff like that. So there you go. Makota being Makota, doing a thing. But this guy survived to eat otherworldly food. There you go. Now Makota's fan club will grow exponentially, right? But one thing that is to be mentioned about Tempest is that they knew that Fel was a Fenrir and not a Great Wolf, like is going around.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like both rumors are going around, the whole like the Great Wolf and the Fenrir thing, and they're kind of going in like competition with each other of like, I've heard it's a Fenrir. No, it's probably just a Great Wolf.
Yeah. But
just
in the case of
downplay it.
In the case of the leader of Tempest, there are, what was this, like floor 25 or something? If they're that far down, they're gonna know what a freaking Fenrir is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
they're probably a very competent adventure party to make it down this far, even if they did end up in pretty rough shape.
Yeah.
But like they were saying, it seemed like it was more of a freak situation. That like they've been down here before, and they haven't ever been ambushed by Spriggans before.
right. And what the guild member at the like office in front of the dungeon did say that this is like a roguelite dungeon, that it changes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Dungeons in general in this world they're living creatures, and they change themselves to both lure more people in and to potentially catch people off guard, because once again the whole thing is they're a living creature that literally it literally feeds off of dead adventurers.
Yep.
So it makes itself appealing to lure you in and then tries to get you killed.
Yeah. So just reaffirming all that kind of stuff. They basically powered their way all the way through this for the most part. The final two floors were, it's kind of like the classic. You know what I mean? I kind of like that they kind of pulled the classic with the fact that the second to last floor is this just big honking desert. And then the final floor is just the boss room. You know what I mean? That's like a super classic thing to do, is like, well, the 29th floor isn't really that big of a deal. You're fighting the element. And that's going to be a pretty big ask for anybody not this party. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like it's a massive endeavor to traverse a desert like that in the first place with how big it is. Then you also have to traverse it knowing exactly where you need to go, which Fel can cheat and just knows where the boss is. But then also, these are the kind of things that normally you'd have to go into prepared for by itself. But you have to be prepared enough to go through this on the 29th floor after you've already gone through all of your issues getting to the first 28.
Yeah. And as we saw on the 22nd floor at the beginning of this episode here, they ran into an S-tier snake creature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's some dangerous stuff that can be on even like the mid floors there, the higher mid floors. So it's just this definitely explains why most people haven't cleared it. Like nobody's cleared this, should I say? I'd wager to say that Tempest is probably one of the best adventuring groups out there, based on just like the way their equipment looked and how their party looked. You know what I mean? And getting to floor 24 or whatever that was, is probably like the cap for pretty much anybody that's not Fel.
Yeah, like we know Iron Will is a fairly competent party, and they talk about at the end of this of like that's the first time they've made it to floor 12 even.
Yeah. So this dungeon is pretty serious business. But
admittedly, they made it to floor 12 in just 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days. That's pretty good, right? So, you know, they've never really they made it sound like they never really like went hard on this place. I think they said that was the second time they were there, like in the episode last week.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's pretty damn good. You make your second excursion and you've almost made it halfway in a place like that. That's pretty good. And as was pointed out, the floors that are like the breadwinner floors are 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to like those guys from last week that were explaining the dungeon etiquette. Just look at all the stuff they came out with. But we talked about it last week. They could probably live for like a year more on all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, from what we've seen, like most of the like rookie and low ranking adventurers just hang out in the first 10 floors. And then like the people who actually like make a real serious living off of the dungeon farm 10 through 15. And the only people who really go past 15 are people who are trying to actively push themselves and try to get to the end of the dungeon.
Yep. So either way, a couple other things that Warren discussing is I want to try to find where he got the bag. I believe that was before he ran into Tempest, but I just wanted to see like the exact, because I believe maybe it was after, because it was after because it was from the like skull-headed monsters. Yeah, there it is. So
afterwards.
It's a medium magic bag that holds 20 burlap sacks worth of items, and time passes normally, meaning while this is a magic bag, kind of like item box, in item box and similar skills, time does not pass. It's stasis.
Yeah, it's a stasis. Yeah. Meanwhile, this is a traditional bag of holding, where it's just a normal bag that is bigger on the inside, but it is still just a bag, and things still just are affected like normal inside it.
Yeah. So I appreciate classic stuff like this. It's always fun when you find a bag like this in any kind of game, because it really helps with the true evil in all of gaming, the biggest boss in all of gaming, or just anywhere.
The loading screen?
Inventory management.
Nah, definitely the loading screen.
The loading screen, yeah. You guys remember when loading screens used to be a problem? I remember when me and Age did our stream of Divinity 2. I spent a lot of several hours after each stream managing the inventory so we didn't have to do it on stream. It was miserable, but it was something that had to be done to make things make sense and work properly. If you're in any kind of like RPG setting, like, like a Larian game, like Baldur's Gate 3, I'm sure inventory in that is a shitstorm too, but that's how a lot of those games are. But when you get an item like this definitely really helps. And I mentioned it during the reaction, it's cool for Makoto in the case of item box is a very rare thing, as was pointed out in season 1. So the more he can obfuscate the rareness of all the stuff he's got going on, the better. This could probably handle. Obviously, it can't like hold his like his big stove thing. You know what I mean? But like the majority of like his like materials that you could just throw in there that aren't like, perishable things.
It could hold his stove.
I guess it could. 20 burlap sacks. A burlap sack is usually, those things that you like
big potato sacks.
Yeah, they're like the big potato sacks. You know what I mean? So that's a lot of space. It's also the Crunchyroll player. Do you think it could fit the Crunchyroll player in there? Maybe we could just throw the Crunchyroll player in the burlap sack and just beat it to death.
Yeah, it is worth noting that the thing is 20 burlap sacks in size as just a medium bag of holding.
Yeah, so
there's probably a large and an extra large on above that.
Yeah, but so that's 20 burlap sacks. So let's just say that's the average big potato sack. That's the size of a small room. You know what I mean? Like a pantry. It's basically a bag of pantry. So that's I hope they do something with this at least. Like we mentioned the ring last week. I hope they do something with this because this is one of those things that, like I said, can obfuscate him having item box. Like he could he casually pulled the potions out of item box in front of Tempest, but now he could have like the potions in here. That kind of thing.
Yeah, he could just keep a bunch of his like more mundane and non-perishable stuff that he doesn't want to like reveal shit for. Like he can keep some of his money in it, so that way he only has to pull some money out, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and he could keep like a handful of the potions in it, and so on and so forth. Where like that way he doesn't have to bust out the item box every time he wants to pull just anything out of his inventory.
Yep.
He only would need the item box for like carrying back bodies or storing food.
Yep. So it's going to be one of those things where it'll be interesting to see if every like adventuring group or just like random passerby that weren't like the bandits in season 1 have been reasonable people. Yeah. At some point, I assume he's going to run into somebody who's not reasonable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would covet his skill or something. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So the
what's a big part of this show so far has just been him basically trying to obfuscate his wealth and abilities.
Yep.
And this is just another tool for it.
Like when he first set off for the Kingdom of Venan in like the second episode or the first episode, whenever that was, that one trader guy that he was talking to in the wagon ride, he went super hush hush like about a lot of like the politics and like how traders are treated and stuff like that. And then when Makoto brings up the item box, that guy kind of like made a huge deal out of it. Like that, that'd be awesome. Yeah. You know what I mean? And people covet those skills and stuff like that. So hopefully that kind of world introduction isn't forgotten. But it's you got to kind of give it time. So.
Yeah, I mean the only other person we've seen with freaking with an item box, besides the other heroes, which we still barely seen any of, is freaking Elrond.
Yeah. And he's an elf, so...
He's an elf S-rank adventurer.
Yeah. So, we'll just have to see, but this is one of those things where hopefully it's actually used. I want this to be used more than the ring now. You know what I mean? So hopefully that is something that he actually puts to practical use. Because I think it'd be important for keeping that lower profile. Because somebody with a bag of holding, it, in theory, you could buy this. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's not like a big deal for a trader to have. It's like you can't just buy the item box skill.
Yeah, no, like this is the kind of thing where like it's probably a pretty big like wealth show of wealth to have. Because it probably is like only a rare drop from dungeons, but it still is something that exists and that like is one of the things that like a lot of adventurers probably do pull out periodically. Like when you have dozens of adventure parties coming in through here a month. Even if it's a rare drop, you're probably still getting several of them coming out a month.
Yeah. And even the bags that, like, say, Iron Will had, they were like that. It was like this size, right? But they were pulling more stuff out of it. So they were probably like small bags of holding that they all have for their provisions and stuff like that. So it's definitely a thing. But once again, another very good episode across the board. It'll be interesting to see what comes of the fact that the dungeon is cleared now. Is there going to be like a sign? You know what I mean? Like, there's always there's not always, but there's sometimes when a dungeon like this in just any kind of fantasy is defeated for the first time, or just at all, there's signs outside the dungeon for some reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, from what we know, the dungeons themselves, it wouldn't like just stop functioning because the boss was defeated. The core of the dungeon itself has to be destroyed, from what like Fel was saying. But kind of similar to the freaking dungeons in Reincarnated as a Sword. But it probably does put a serious strain on the dungeon having the boss defeated. Because once again, the dungeon is a living thing and it has to expend energy to respawn the monsters.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when it loses something as big as the behemoth, like, final boss here, it's probably a big deal. But I'm sure the guild or something, like, somebody will know. I'd assume, like, Elrond will know somehow, right?
Yeah, probably a big part of the guilds managing the adventure managing the dungeon is probably regulating it to keep the dungeon healthy.
Yep.
So that it doesn't get overexploited or so on.
Yep. But either way, it'll be interesting to see the fallout, what comes of that, you know. I'm sure there'll be something about that. However, at the end of the reaction, I made the Dark Souls joke. Makoto now has to put all his stat points into strength because of this.
Well, normally you would put all your stat points into strength if you get the, like, rare two-hand drop. However, if you're an actual Dark Souls player, you'd know that this is enchanted with lightning magic and therefore has 0 scaling.
Yeah, I guess that would be a problem. That is a magic sword imbued with lightning magic. So you might as well go Faith.
Yeah, that's the big trade-off in Dark Souls with having elemental weapons, is they do a shit ton of damage, and since their damage is elemental, they bypass a lot of enemies' defenses and stuff like that. However, the trade-off is they have 0 stat scaling, so it's just like they do a shit ton of base damage, but there's no way to make them do more damage.
Yep. But either way, Caladbolg is a fairly I hesitate to use standard, but Caladbolg is a very well-known mythical sword in all of fantasy. It's in a lot of places. Okay? There's nothing wrong with it, but again, it's in a lot of places, such as Guild Wars, that had a fairly famous Caladbolg sword, that kind of thing. Several other, like, big-time games have Caladbolgs and that kind of deal.
I'm suddenly, because I needed to say the name of it, I'm suddenly drawing the freaking blank on the name of the freaking guy, but it's the weapon, the like legendary weapon of a Celtic mythological figure. I'm trying to blank on his fucking name though. Just look it up before I sit here.
That's right.
Wrecking my brain.
But either way, the other thing that's worth mentioning about this, obviously, is it's made of adamantite. We already saw how big deal Mithril was in this world. Generally speaking, above Mithril in the rarity scale of...
Cuclane.
Oh, Cuclane, yeah.
Yeah, it was originally the sword of Fargus Macroche, but Cuclane claims it as part of his whole, like, mythology shenanigans.
Right. So either way, it's definitely a big deal. It'll be interesting to see what comes of this. But again, adamantite exists, so that's a big find. Once again, generally speaking, it's the step up from mithril, or a sort of step up from mithril, and we've already seen what mithril is capable of in this world. Via Sui's blacksmithing, that kind of thing, how much it's worth.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see what comes of this.
Generally speaking, it's mithril or a calcum adamantite, though depending on the fiction, sometimes they swap adamantite and or a calcum around.
Yep. So Makoto has one hell of a weapon now. Whether he uses it all, we'll just have to see. But again, another solid episode. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. And again, we're not even halfway through the friggin' season. I was ready to put the stamp of approval after our last week, and then, here we go with another like half season's worth of stuff in one episode, basically.
Yeah, a lot of other shows would have made this dungeon expedition at least like a 3 or 4 episode mini arc.
Yep. 2 episodes.
2.
And it doesn't even feel rushed or anything. So.
One of the other things I was going to say, that I keep freaking getting distracted with other shit, is a big part of the whole, like, rationing. Like, people probably thought that, like, Makoto was potentially, like, going through here, like, over-preparing with all the food and stuff like that. Especially knowing how quickly they probably would get through it. But, one of the things that most people probably would forget is the fact that, once again, while they're eating monsters, they can't eat the monsters in the dungeon.
Yep.
Because they despawn and just drop random... they don't even drop the normal ingredients like meat or whatever. They just drop the materials like horns and orc testicles.
Yeah, exactly. Which, to that end, kind of weird that we didn't get a drop from the snake. That was an S-tier monster and it was just nothing. That's the only kind of weird thing out of this episode, was they kind of made a big deal about it, and then we got no drop on it. We just moved on. I was like, not even like a legendary snake fang, just like a poison sac for Sui to, become more poison slime. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Yeah, we got no... It didn't show any drop or whatever. Like, they might have still gotten one. But
they might bring it up later. Like, because Makoto has pointed out, like, we got this thing when we did this, and they didn't show it. You know what I mean? So it might be like a later thing. Like, you want a poison thing? Yeah, we got this thing from the snake. You know what I mean? So it could be something like that.
Yeah, but that's the big thing. Like, the big difference, once again, between, like, fighting actual monsters and then just fighting stuff in the dungeon is that the monsters in the dungeon aren't the actual monsters. They are just the dungeon's recreation of the monsters. And therefore, you can't actually bring the bodies out or anything. It's just, you defeat it, and the dungeon rewards you a loot to entice you to stay.
Yep. So, anyway, again, another solid episode. We're probably going to slowly be making our way toward the ocean by the end of the season. I can't imagine we're not going to get there with the way the show is pacing is played out, and the fact that it's in the OP and the ED. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, I mean, we've pretty much done everything we need to here at this point. Like, we might get one more episode of them kind of dealing with the whole you guys are the first ones to conquer the dungeon, and Elrond freaking out about that and stuff like that, and then throwing them like a celebration before they leave. Right. But then they'll probably just immediately continue on to the ocean from there, because at this point, like I said, we've done everything that there was to do here. Yep. And keep in mind, even with the dwarf guy from the first or second episode, I think that was the first episode even, but it didn't even feel like he had a small part. He was part of an entire episode, and he was only there one episode, and it felt like he played a fairly decent role for the series already. Yeah. And a lot of one-off characters don't get that feeling, but this show is the polar opposite of Guild Receptionist. Yeah, no, they put quite a bit of emphasis and character on most of the
side characters like the other parties and freaking like the receptionists and the guild masters and whatnot, where like most of them will probably come back at some point or another.
Yep. So anyway, another solid thumbs up. So ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, beyond however you're watching, we always appreciate you stopping by and hanging with us here in the dojo for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And this was Campfire Cooking Season 2, Episode 973, right? No, this was Episode 5. So have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good one. See you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.